Yes, we'll be back from that break. You're still watching Smart Main's Business. It's exactly just a few minutes. That is past 8, just about 6. And of course, we're still driving you with the latest reports that are quite very important when it comes to decision making and implementation. But of course, I'm also with Masi Katsume, so we're going to be driving you through all the way. But of course, before we proceed into any other discussion, let's get into our business tips and quotes as we get inspired for this morning. Well, of course, it's always good to, laugh because no one can take it away from you, right?
Yeah, you've been true right there. And of course, they're very fast to visualize the outcome. So you should always plan ahead, anticipate for what could possibly come. That is called preparing for risks. It's also there, it's part of it. Preparing for risks, preparing prior on whatever will come, whether it's something negative. How ready are you to get into that matter? But anyway, we are still discussing matters relating to innovation in our country, Uganda, and how we are progressing as a country. And of course, we've seen different startups coming in. We have seen fintechs coming in, cheaper cash. We have Jumia. We have health techs coming in. We have a lot of innovations that have come about. Why? Because of the timing. For some came in a timing where it was needed. For most cases, for health. For those that started up innovations during COVID-19, they really caught fire, and of course people were embracing it because those people are not having movement. So what you needed to do is just get to your phone, type in, I feel nauseated, I feel a bit feverish. I don't know what is prescribed for you and delivered to your home. So definitely these innovations, and of course we're going to be looking at the different factors that you have to consider as a person, as an entrepreneur, as a person who has a lot of knowledge with you and you're hoping to put it into practice. What are the factors that you have to consider for you to start up an innovation? That is what we're talking about, Andrew, earlier on the show with Godwin about innovation startups in Uganda. We've seen, like I've been saying, fintech, we have education, my class, K class. So definitely there are very many innovations that have come about, and mostly of them due to COVID-19.
Yeah, actually, quite a number of them. But maybe just to correct something. Sometimes when we talk about startups, majority of the people get it wrong. We normally have the perspective that it's all about technology. But you see, startups are not just tech.
Yeah, it's not just tech. It's just that the ones that get to be known.
They are tech-based.
They're tech-based.
So anything that is somebody develops that is kind of solving.
I mean,
the
we have
problem,
people that came up with briquettes. That's
that is a startup, and that's an innovation. You know, yeah, and that is something which, and you see, it's quite interesting that now, like the briquettes innovation, it's something that is quite very relevant to the society because
it's environmentally friendly.
it lots of, you know, it's environmentally friendly, you know, and so many aspects. But of course, that now brings us to the topic of discussion of how do we get to actually, what do you consider if you're an innovator out there and you're trying to put out something? What do you really put into consideration?
Of course, what you have to put into consideration is what people need.
Yeah.
Yeah, what is really on demand. You have to know what is on demand, and of course what is happening within the country. Now that we are trying to deal with all the emissions and trying to conserve the environment, what have you done so far? Is there an idea that you have in mind that you know what? Someone has come up with briquettes, maybe I can use A, B, C, and D. You know, now just imagine a person that came up with gas, use of gas.
Yeah.
They had something that was transparent that really happened that led to that. So you have to know the needs of the people, what is happening. Now, give me an example of COVID-19. Yeah. So there are very many innovations that happened in health, in education, people embracing online school, online classes, and then pharmacies, online pharmacies. So depending on the situation that is happening, also that is when you have to bring your A game.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. And of course, you have to know the feasibility. You have to have the resources necessary. You have to have the right technology.
Technology.
Yeah, the right equipment, which is also part of technology, and of course the regulatory environment. What measures, what policies are there for you to start having such an innovation? Is it prohibited in the country? Yeah. So you have to have that in mind. Resources, mostly resources.
Resources, it's quite a key factor. Now, of course, getting to understand what you really need to put into consideration. Now that brings us to a point of what are those innovations that have already made it out there, and to what extent have they been driving business in Uganda, you know? Because we've seen creating the new products and services that has been put onto the Ugandan market, as the startups are often at the forefront of innovation. And surprisingly, most of the startups take the forefront of the innovation. And you see now that this is the disadvantage in most cases of the traditional players in the industry, regardless of any field. You could be in the service sector, production sector. Majority of the new startups tend to put innovation at the forefront, like they embrace it much more. And before you know it, what used to be a startup has now taken the traditional, the former traditional giant that was on the block. You know, I think that the most clearest story about this, it's Netflix and Blockbuster. That one I can talk about innovation and not give that as an example worldwide. Okay. Now, of course, we've seen the productivity and efficiency has also improved in some sort of a way, and creating jobs, boosting the economic growth, and startups are also major job creators in Uganda. Why am I saying this? It's because in 2021, the Ugandan startup ecosystem employed over 1 million people, and the startups are also helping to boost economic growth by creating new markets and expanding existing ones. Maybe the ultimate question that you could be asking yourself is that, I mean, what questions which majority of the Ugandans could be asking themselves is that, would I really be employed by a startup? That's a potential thing to think about.
You could actually be employed by a startup if at all you see that their base is now known. They are now known, and of course they're at a level where they can employ now. Look at Jumia. Jumia is employing hundreds of people. Yeah. So if it's a startup and they have had success, they could start employing. But of course, obviously, you start as an individual or as a certain group, so that you could expand with time.
The challenge comes in is that one of the tech CEOs in Uganda said that majority of the people look at tech companies, probably because they're making nice adverts out there, and there is an impression that actually they are making it. But somebody actually mentioned, of course I won't mention the platform, it's a little bit popular, and say you may not believe that platform X up to now has not yet started making profit.
Oh.
I won't mention, but I'm just trying to put something into you to understand that startups, the disadvantage we have in Uganda, majority of them rely on donations.
Yeah.
Donors, because we see the United Nations funding quite a number of them, and that puts the jobs of the people that work with them at some point of a risk. I'll say.
And I can imagine, just in case we have like a catastrophe or maybe a pandemic, you could be laid off.
Okay, the advantage is that they are, like I say, they rely on donor funds in most cases, because even the donors know that this is still growing. But of course, the time they start to really profit, they really make it big. But why? It's because of the system, probably the factors that are within the nation and all those aspects. Because most of these people that find the startups are unknown. I mean, they need money.
Of course, they need
majority
money.
Of
most
them
of them are private.
are not financially
very much.
Established. Let me say that.
It's just something you come up with an idea and you're like, what? Let me start this up.
Exactly.
With no support behind it, just you and maybe a few friends of yours. Yeah. So I don't think maybe government is doing enough to support these startups.
Yeah.
Yeah. We need more involvement by government. It's not about skilling and all that. We see those that have much more knowledge on innovations that can bolster our economy as well. Those ones need to be facilitated. Yeah.
Okay. And now, of course, when we got to take a look at real life scenarios, we have fintech startups that provide risk-based credit best credit to micro businesses in Uganda. For example, we know one New Media, which has helped over 100,000 microfinances access credit, and it has disbursed over $30 million in loans. And now the impact of this to the Ugandan economy is significant, as it is estimated that these enterprise, the loans given out there, have created and sustained over 100,000 jobs. That is the New Media fintech company. And of course, we see also other e-commerce platforms that connect farmers directly. We have the Bingo Fresh in there. We're trying to give real life scenarios where startups are actually driving business in Uganda. Bingo Fresh is an e-commerce platform, and of course that connects farmers that is directly to consumers. Now it has over 10,000 farmers, imagine, on its platform, and it actually delivers fresh produce to over 100,000 customers every month, and it has helped to reduce food waste and increase farmers' incomes as a result of that. But of course, we also need to understand that there is also evidence to suggest that startups are having a positive impact on the Ugandan economy. Now, this is the general, because a report in 2022, a study by the World Bank, found out that actually startups contribute to over 10%. That is of Uganda's gross domestic product. And of course, the study also found that startups are creating new jobs and markets, and they are helping boost economic growth at the same time.
So imagine if we had more startups coming in, we would have more than 10%. We would have like 15%. So
yeah, or 20.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would actually urge whoever is really planning, if you're an entrepreneur and maybe you have a little bit of knowledge somewhere in something, you could go for it. You never know. Those that started up, they also didn't know it would actually be a thing. People like Tuvayo, people like Tugende, people like Safe Border. You could start small and eventually you could be one of the companies that is employing hundreds of young talent in Uganda or Africa as a whole, because it's so disappointing, by the way, Andrew, to see great minds going to do innovations outside Africa. Yes, why? Maybe they are scared, probably they're not going to be facilitated, and then they have to take their brains there where they are going to be appreciated and paid huge sums of money. Because you told me about the director of some visual images, visual effects, being a Ugandan. You see,
quite lots of them. All right, it's exactly 21 minutes past 8, and still watching Smart Main's Business. Andrew Barigi here with Master Katsime. But of course, still to remind you that the markets on the Zabo platform are already on. You can participate by dialing *292#, which is the code for you there, which will avail you with options where you'll be in position to buy bonds or securities for a fee of just 15,000 Ugandan shillings. Start 8:15. That's when the markets open, and they run all the way to 3:15 p.m. That is East African time. This is effective Monday up to Friday. But from the weekends and the public holidays, when these markets cannot be accessed. But of course, that's not the big deal here. At least you have the rest of the days to capitalize and make money, something which I believe is quite key and important. Zabo tells you it's my money, it's my future, and Altex East Africa tells you that you need to do something new for yourself. Well, at this point in time, at 22 minutes past 8, let's get into a short break. And of course, when we return, we have business, entertainment, and sports into the pipeline.